channel. So if you're new here, I'm Debbie and this is Colour Me Stress Free. This is my channel, and today I'm going to share how I did this watercolour galaxy background in a Hannah Calzone book. Now I will use more or less all of the same paints that I used here. I'll probably use different brushes. Probably use the same masking tape as well. I'll use my handy dandy heat gun here just to save a bit of time, and then you can see the whole process of me doing it. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that it turns out like this, because knowing me, as soon as I click the camera I put pressure on myself and it doesn't. But the only page that I could really do this on that's nice and open is this one that's left. This is the only one that I could really do this on. So that's what we're doing. So this is the masking tape that I use. I will leave a link down below all the different things that I'm using in case you're interested. But I went round the whole of the outside with this masking tape. Let's double check the border. There's not an absolute massive border, but there's still a border there. So it's not difficult doing this. It's not difficult. It's just knowing what you're doing and the timing of things. So let's get this masking tape on for a start. Just roughly measure it up. And I didn't put a sheet to back. Actually, I'm going to have to do that because I did forget. Just a plastic sheet behind. That's what I like to do whenever I use any sort of water mediums. So let's line this up as best as we can. And then top and bottom, same thing. Now because there's not much of an illustration on this one, I'm not going to have to be really careful. I didn't do that long enough. But if you have a really big illustration, you'd have to be a little bit more careful than me, or use masking fluid or masking fluid pen to cover up your illustration and not get any watercolour on it. So now that we've got that on, and I've messed that bottom one up, let's try that again. There we go. Now that we've got that on, that's going to stay on now until it is completely dry. Just double check because we don't want any gaps. And then for the in between, just one long strip. And we're going to pop this from corner to corner. Do as I say and not as I do. That shouldn't be too bad, that actually. That used to be a saying that my mum said to me years and years ago. And we will work on this side first, because this side is the smaller triangle, so you want to work in your bigger triangle first. So I should have pre-wet these instead of jabbering on. So the watercolour paints that I have got in this palette, I've got just a few Daniel Smith, I've got one White Nights, some Paul Rubin watercolour paints that came in tubes that I've popped in here and let dry, a couple of Winsor & Newton Professional, and just normal Winsor & Newton Cotman as well. Just a mixture of colours. And I don't want to go for the same, or shall I go for the same colour scheme? We'll wet all the Daniel Smith because I know that I'll use them. We'll wet that, but that's a Payne's Grey there, one of my favourite colours. We'll we'll activate the purples, the reds, there's a couple of the greens as well as the blue and the black. We've got a red up there. So it only takes a second for that to do its magic. Now, do I want to use this one or do I want to use my other one? But you just need a big brush to get clean water onto this to prep the paper. And it is quite important how much water that you are putting down there. You don't want puddles. That's what you don't want. So let's make sure that you can see everything, because I have a terrible habit of getting in the zone and you not being able to see. So hopefully that should be okay. So that brush is completely wet, so I'm just dampening it off and then going straight ahead. And apparently there's already paint still on this. This is Not going well. Not going well, but don't worry. Don't worry. So, just clean water, she says. You just want to get a nice shine to the paper. You don't want, I nearly said glisten, you don't want it to be absolutely soaking wet, but you just want enough. I was testing it with my finger, I want a little bit more, like that, soaking. So for the very first layer I am going to stick with my big brush and straight into the paint. I want some more water. Let's move that so it's not banging as much, that might help. There we go. So you want this all over. I'm not too fussed about getting it on that little tiny illustration itself, but you just want to just be a little bit careful, just mindful that it's there. So now that I've got that first layer down, let's put some yellow in there as well. So we're finished with that brush for now. Move over to a bigger brush, let's get that wet, and then we'll go for reds and oranges on this side. And it's all about building layers with galaxies. That's what I've learned now. So I'm dabbing the colour on, and then because the paper is already wet, it's going to sort of do its own thing. You're not going to be able to control it overly, like as much as you would want, and you don't want that anyway. You want the paint to do as it wants, do its own thing. See if I can flick a little bit off, just like that. And just move it around a bit into the orange, and not worrying too much. You just want to make sure that that paper is still wet. You want it to be wet while you're doing this to get this sort of effect. So I'll clean my brush off, into the yellow, add some more of that, and the orange. So while that is still really wet, I will leave it to dry for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I will come back with the heat gun. Otherwise, if I use the heat gun now, I'm going to blow all these little puddles that I've made everywhere, and you'll start getting lines, and that's what you don't want that. You don't want that. So let's take these out of here and let them start drying, and I'll get some clean water as well while I'm waiting. So yeah, leave that for 5 or 10 minutes. You've just got to be a bit patient. So that has been a little bit longer than 10 minutes because I sat there editing a video. It's been about 20 minutes now, but I'm going to finish it off with the heat gun. Now that should be okay. So for the second layer, to make sure that my paints are ready again, because I did leave it for a little bit longer than I initially wanted to. If you hear dogs in the background, they have just decided to come back to life now that I've clicked record. So just clean water again. We just want that surface wet. Now the paper has started buckling, but it's not watercolour paper, so it is going to do that. So paintbrush, let's go ahead with some oranges. I'm hoping that I've wet it enough there, it should be okay. And then some reds, just here and there. I did the edges, I believe, last time a little bit darker, so have I wet it enough there? No, I've not. So make sure that that edge is nice and wet again. pop this on. And then I'm going to go for the even darker red, which is more of a plummy red, I'd say, like a burgundy. Bring some of that into it. Clean my brush off. Then with a clean brush, just move this round a little bit. Just don't want any harsh edges. I don't mind this bit here because it is over the illustration, but I've got a bit of a harsh edge there, so I'll just blend that out. Add a bit of yellow there, shall we? Bit of yellow up here, but because that red and burgundy is so dark, it might not show up as well. But same thing again, we're just going to leave that. I will try and use a heat gun a little bit, but if I hold it up a bit higher, it might be okay. I just don't want the puddles moving around too much. Yes, we can see there that it is moving, so I am going to be patient and leave it for as long as I need to leave it, come back and finish it with the heat gun. So again, it's been about 15 minutes or so, a bit quicker this time. I'm just noticing now, before we completely dry it, that we are getting a couple of lines, so before they get any worse, just blend out. Like that. So I think it is still a tiny bit damp, but with the edges I'm going to melt this glue with the heat gun to get it off. Drying it now. Right, let's check that now, because that needs to be 100% dry before we put any masking tape on this side. Now I don't want to mess around with it anymore because it's buckling that much that it's lifting. The masking tape is lifting because the paper is buckling underneath it just at the top. But I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. So let's go back to the page and reference. So I have added a little bit more brown. I'm wondering whether I should go back and add more brown, or just do more on that side. Shall I add more brown? Go on, we'll do it. I'll add a bit of brown, so I don't even think I activated a brown. So while we're masking it back up, so don't do that step. Don't do that step of taking the masking tape off, because you'll be doing it again, like me. But right, roll my sleeves up, otherwise I'm gonna have paint everywhere. And try my best to line this up. I'm not too worried, because the next side is going to be darker. A lot darker actually than this side. So same thing again. Let's wet this side. Just be a bit more careful up there where that tape is not behaving very well. So in with the brown, and I'll use a smaller brush this time. And this is the white Nights brown paint. I just bought the one just to test it out. Yeah, we're alright there. Just a little bit more. Using clean water there, just more around the edges. And I do want a different brown. Let's try this brown here. That's a little bit darker, that might work a little bit better. I'll just keep going in and tweaking where you see fit. A little bit more water at the top there. Try and try again until you succeed. Just making sure all my brushes are clean and ready. And let's So I'm going to leave that for a little bit longer because there is a puddle of water just forming there because I added more water. So we will be right back. I'm pretty certain now that we should be okay. So it shouldn't be such of a hassle taking this off because it's not been on too long. So please don't rip, please don't rip, please don't rip, please don't rip, please don't rip. There you go, you just ask it not to rip and it won't rip. So I'm quite confident that I can put, excuse me, I can put some masking tape over that knife. So it's the same thing, but you're doing it on the opposite side. So you're going over the top of what you've already done, lining up as best as you can because you don't want any of the white showing through, that's the only thing. So that should be okay. I'm hoping. That might be right, that might be so fine. I'm going to go over the top of the orange just a tad. Don't want any of that white showing through. So just a little bit over the top of the orange. Just like that, and that should be okay. So this side I want my blues and purples, so add a little bit more just in case it's decided to not activate. Payne's grey, and then my blues at the top as well. And we want to wet the paper. Now I've not changed my water, so it might have a hint of an orange to it. So we want to get the paper wet. Wet all over. Get a base of that blue down. Oh, and I've gone over all of the illustration. Well, never mind. The background of it needed doing because it's the bottle and it's see-through. Just think of it like that. A little bit more of that blue for the outsides. Just using the same brush here just because I want one flat colour. Clean that brush off and just pop it down onto a bigger brush. These brushes that I'm using are the Princeton Neptune ones, and I can't believe I waited this long to buy them. I love them, I love them. So I'm going to try it at a couple of different sizes. So the darker blue, same thing, just dabbing it on where I see fit. And then the Payne's grey, I love, love, love Payne's grey. I don't know if I use this on the other side, but I am doing because I love it. A little bit of black into the purple pink shades. I'm adding a lot of water on this one. See if I can really push my luck. Just random places. I'm not worrying too much at the minute about placement. And same thing again, I let that dry. I know that looks dark now, but it will dry a lot lighter. So yeah, unfortunately it's just a bit of a waiting game with the watercolour sometimes. I think we should be okay to use the heat gun now. You can see how much it is still wet though. I do have a funny feeling that here the blue's going to run across. A little bit. And a little bit there as well, unfortunately. Let's move that out of the way. what I did on the other page is I used, it was this pen, a really shiny silver. I'm not going to do that on this page because I might think of something else to do later on, but I just used that to cover up any mistakes, and that seemed to have done the trick. So I'll go ahead and remove the masking tape on the outside, but I'll do the same thing with the heat gun and use the heat gun to melt the glue. It's difficult doing this to both ends, it's so hot. Loosen that side first and the bottom. I'd be mindful as well because you're using the plastic. If you're using the heat gun, it might melt it. I'd be so careful. It's gonna rip though. See, this is the bottle that I have with masking tape. I'll keep all this in because I'm being truly honest with you. And it is ripping the paper on this side as well, so we'll just have to go with it and see what happens. Let's move that first. And be so careful now. Right, so it's off. I have got a little pen. It's called a quickie glue pen or something. It might be in my diamond painting drawer. Let me just check. Yes, it most certainly is. Just this one. And I'll use this as a piece of the paper there. Let's get it working. Let's come loose. So, come on, I had you working the other day. There you go. So just a little bit of glue there, just stick that back down. That's totally my fault. And a little bit at the top here as well. Or if you've got a glue stick, you could just use that. Just to stick that back down so it doesn't rip even more. Let's put that back. And we can move this now. I only dipped my finger in the black paint then. That would have been a nightmare. But I don't think it's as nice as my other one, but again, I think I do pressure on myself. I really do pressure on myself. The only thing that I've missed out now, but I will do it, is the white spackles for the Galaxy. Now you could use shiny watercolour, you could use white acrylic paint. I'm using the Dr. Phil, the Dr. P.H. Martin's paint. I'll use that today. I think I used that last time actually. So I need an old paintbrush now, not using my new nice ones. We'll use an old one, just like this. Let's turn this round. And this just wipes off clean, as long as you don't let the pigment stay there for too long. So we just want a little bit of that. And if you've got nice nails, they might get messy, so you better hurry up and wash your hands once you've done this. A couple of drops of water, just clean water. Just mix that. And let's put my cloth on the other side because I don't want any white on the black. Just like that. I'm alright because I've got a white desk, so it's fine. And then using the tip of my finger to create the stars. Just as easy as that. Quickly wipe off my finger because I don't want that drying on my nails. And then for the bigger splodges, just dip in and tap. on your finger like that, and that's more or less it. So I'll quickly dry all this off before it starts to stick. But that is basically what I did for that Galaxy watercolour background. Like I said, I think the other one's a little bit better, but I still like this. They're both completely different. Now it has made the paper warp a little bit and wave. Keep it on top of a couple of heavy books, it'll be fine and dandy in a couple of days. But I hope that you enjoyed watching. I find it difficult sometimes because if you're anything like me, in the evening I will just zone out and do my own thing. So the fact that I've remembered mostly step by step and more or less the colours that I've used, pat on the back for me. But I'm going anyway. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.